Amy LaFalcia, welcome to Irish Granny Tarot. Apologies that this is so late in the day. Let's move on. Let's just say installing blinds, setting up, never mind. Okay. So our book today, it's time for our Saturday book, and our book today is Dolores Cannon, The Convoluted Universe, Book 1. Now, caveat at the beginning. Frequently, I do books that I 100% agree with, usually the political ones. The more metaphysical books resonate with me 100%. I'm still trying to figure Dolores Cannon out. I have a lot of respect for her work. I think she was extremely intelligent. I think the notion of hypnosis and regression, fascinating. I have no problem with that. Some of the narrative of some of her subjects, I don't know what to think. I'm not saying I disbelieve it. I'm not saying I do believe it. But here's the thing. There's so much at the core of her work that rings true for me and helps lead us down a path that I'm hoping to take here in the next few weeks, that I think this is a really good idea. And I know that people love her work. I really appreciate it. I hope nobody is thinking I'm judging her harshly. Let's just say I like to keep an open mind, but I'm still on a journey. And I would never pretend to tell people what to believe. I may assert my personal beliefs, but you don't have to agree with me. That's fine. We're all trying to figure this out for ourselves. Depending on the day of the week, I might have a different point of view. I really enjoyed this book. Now, I have been working on these books for over a month, so it's been at least 5 weeks since I read this. In one ear, out the other, as far as my handwriting goes. So if I seem a little discombobulated, it's because it's been a while since I've looked at these notes, and I have a lot of notes. Not complaining, but I just think I'll share with you 192 pages of notes. And this book, without the footnotes, actually, come to think of it, there really aren't any footnotes. 509 pages, this book. Well worth it. I really enjoyed it. And I hope you enjoyed this synopsis. So let's get going. Let's hope I can decipher my pathetic hieroglyphics here. Convoluted Universe, Book 1 by Dolores Cannon, written in 2001. Actually published for the first time in 2001. I do believe she updated it. Yes, it's been updated. It's had multiple reprints. And the last reprint was in 2021. I don't know if it was edited at that time. Very popular writer. And her work goes back. The original publication was 2001, but this work goes back decades. So it's important to remember that she kept a lot of the narrative of her various hypnotic sessions until she had enough that tied together. And until she understood. She was told right from the very beginning, we're going to give you what we think you're going to be able to understand and what we think people are ready to hear, but we'll see. So let's just go into the introduction. So this is a continuation of the more complex issues that arose in her book, The Custodians, and she decided to address them in a separate book. She started out interviewing people and hearing about, alien stuff, and it rapidly turned into metaphysics. And I think there's a really good reason for that. And I have a book coming up in a few weeks after we've done with Dolores Cannon that's going to tie all this together. Hope. Anyway, she was a hypnotherapist since the 1960s, working with people, as you all know, but for those who haven't seen our earlier videos, and I would recommend going back and checking out the other videos of her books that we've done here. She was doing hypnosis for people who were trying to deal with phobias, stopping smoking, losing weight, and very rapidly started getting this information from people that wasn't quite sure what to make of it. And long story short, they were remembering past lives. And she uses this special method, and I'm reading farther in another book, not even by her. It's called quantum hypnosis, and it uses somnambulistic trances, which is not quite the same thing most people do. It communicates directly with the subconscious. She called herself a psychic investigator and reporter. She told in her books what she heard from people. And she uses whatever language or sentence structure that the particular trance subjects gave her. And sometimes it was a little awkward to get around. Sometimes it was really old. Sometimes it was very confusing. So that's to let you know, not her writing and not my reading, but the actual transcripts of the sessions. So part 1 is called The Search for the Prodigy. Chapter 1 is called Linda and Bartholomew Come Into My Life. And keep in mind that some of these sessions overlap with sessions we've already talked about in other books. So if things sound a little familiar, or if the subjects sound a little familiar, they probably are. So she met Linda in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1989 at a book signing, and Linda was very interested in meeting with Dolores, and gave Dolores her business card. Now, Dolores goes quite a bit into her personal life, that she was becoming more and more of a public speaker, trying to fit writing in, doing a lot of traveling, more and more demands, requests from people to do sessions, and it just became really difficult to juggle it all. And she was really looking for subjects who were capable of regressing back far enough for her to continue the narrative of whatever they tapped into was providing her. She was in Washington, D.C., and when she first began doing this, and she regressed anybody who asked, and she got so much in demand that Linda kind of got lost in the crowd. Months later, Cannon returned to Little Rock, discovered Linda was a friend of Janice, and Janice had come to D.C., who came from D.C. to Little Rock for a regression. And so Dolores, reluctantly, because of the time constraints, she agreed to meet with Linda because she was a friend of Janice at her next visit. And Dolores was staying at a friend's house. And, she goes into descriptions of the hotel she stayed at, how they set the room up, the friend's house she stayed at, who was there, who wasn't there. I'm glossing over that because 508 pages. So Linda came over. This is her new subject. And Dolores' impression of her was she seemed like a very competent businesswoman, but she had felt this overwhelming urge to talk to Dolores Cannon. Dolores felt fate had brought them together. And this is a continuing thread throughout all of these books, is that Dolores was sort of put in a position of getting into contact with the people who were able to regress and allow these particular, I'm going to call them entities because some voices from other dimensions. So they weren't they'd start out talking about their present day problem. They didn't know they were going to go back in time. They'd start out with their present day problem. Pretty soon they would start talking about previous lives, and eventually other voices spoke through them, and there was a consistent narrative through all of these different people and decades, and these entities would say, we use the subjects we know we can use, and we give you the information we know that you can understand or the people are ready to use. So that's why this all came about or how it all came about. She didn't actively go around saying, okay, let's regress everybody to a past life. That wasn't the purpose at all. It was to lose weight, stop smoking, not be afraid of heights. Eventually, she did seek out subjects who were willing. They had to be willing. They had to be able to provide the time, who enjoyed having her use them as a conduit. Kind of the best description. So where were we here? So she stayed at her friend Patsy's house, and Linda, the subject, comes over. Seems like a businesswoman, but Dolores felt fate had brought them together. And she just felt this inexplicable compulsion to be regressed with no particular reason. Cannon was not much in the mood because she was tired, lots of speaking, lots of working, book tours, but she agreed, and she was very surprised because when she regressed Linda described herself as a man walking through the woods and being a young wood chopper. Well, wait a minute. What's this got to do with anything? So Linda felt that this man was, Linda speaking as this man, said that this work was being done for enjoyment and not for necessity, that he was the son of a king, like a local lord, and lived in a castle, a fancy place, and didn't like the superficial life of this nobility, and felt a sense of accomplishment in the physical labor. His name was Bartholomew. And this was a large community within stone walls. Castles, the term has been misunderstood. It's not this, turreted building with a king in it. It is, but it includes an entire community, like a village, and a village around the walls as well. The walls were used for protection against marauding whoever, and they were guarded at night. People came and went most of the time in the daytime, but there were shops and businesses and resources and all sorts of people, including animals, inside these vast grounds of the complex itself. Most of the time, depended. So they lived like a large community, and Bartholomew felt really lonely despite all these people around him, because he had a yearning for knowledge and learning, and it wasn't something that people during this time period, we're thinking Middle Ages, had any interest in. And he needed to have an escort to go outside the walls because of the threats in the environment. The peasants wanted to riot against the nobility for whatever circumstance, class warfare. The father, who was the king, was an unkind man, and he treated others badly and used them. And most of the people around figured the son was half mad because he'd like to study the stars and study the universe, and they weren't sure whether they should question his sanity or his association with the occult. Was this demons coming through him? He had a friend who was a very old man who helped him learn. And the friend was passing on important information that he wanted Bartholomew to have because he knew he was going to die and soon. And he wanted this information to survive him. And he said that it was Bartholomew's job to pass on knowledge so it wouldn't be lost. This was knowledge of the universe, creation, that there were many universes and stars very far away, and this is not a big idea for us, but you have to remember the time period. It didn't say exactly, but sometime in the Middle Ages at least. The friend was giving him information to pass on for the future. The friend confided in him eventually that the friend was from the Pleiades, and at that point on the tape, you can hear Dolores Cannon say, "From where?" This was early on in her hypnotic sessions. And the son, the young man, Bartholomew, said, "Well, from the Milky Way, very far away." Cannon said, "So was the stuff this old guy was telling you, was this stuff hard to understand?" And Bartholomew said, "No, this is stuff that when we hear it, we can feel it in our hearts." and describing the friend. It was a very old man in a robe. He didn't know where this old man lived. He said, he just comes to me. So this sounding a little suspect. He just comes to him. And Bartholomew admits, I used to think that he was magic. He says, now I know that my intellect is not advanced enough to understand everything he tells me. Not in this time. And in this time, he said, there are many fake wizards and many people fearful of this sort of thing. He said, I'm 25 years old. I've been studying for 5 years. He appeared, the old guy did, when I was under a tree just contemplating. And at this time period, it was unusual for healthy young men to be wasting their time contemplating under a tree. The old man told him that he was destined to learn all this stuff. And he told him that he then needed to take the information the old man gave him, Bartholomew needed to take it, and find a prodigy to continue the knowledge, find somebody to pass this on, that it was too dangerous, that the knowledge was really important, and it had to be passed on to somebody safe, a chosen person, and he would recognize this person when he found him, that it was an honor and a responsibility, and some power kept all of this whole so it could be passed on. Others couldn't see the old guy, and Bartholomew says they would hear me talking to him and think I was talking to myself, and they just dismissed me as not okay. His father believed in a pagan god, a god of fire. He was very misled. So this is not a Christian community, interestingly enough. Bartholomew says, I'll have to travel far to find the prodigy, and I'm very sad because very sad because I didn't really want to leave. But he was a youngest son. He had no responsibilities, and he said he was available to leave. So Cannon has Linda tell him, she tells Linda, tell me about it farther down in time, another important day, a very important day. So Linda says, I'm on a sightseeing mission in the universe in a small oval capsule, and describes glass windows, but she doesn't understand it because there's no such thing as glass during Bartholomew's time. Still speaking as Bartholomew, he's finding himself out there. This is the story. Doesn't have a word for glass because they didn't have glass. Now, glass existed in the Roman times. I mean, glass did exist, but not every society or culture had familiarity with it. Linda was invited to go by this other entity from a place called Mycon. She describes him as something small with out hair, a round head, large head, a small body, and he's bright. He's just made of light. He's silver, very bright. Linda says, I'm very sleepy. We're arriving at this huge silver place, and he's wearing a belt that has compartments. She says, I put it on, but I don't remember putting it on. I'm wearing something unfamiliar and shiny. I'm encased in it, including the shoes. It's all one piece, so it's like a bodysuit, I guess. So Linda's being taken to a place where people have started a new life. And she's been taken as Bartholomew to find the prodigy. He's delighted because he says, I'm old now and I feared I would never find him. And Cannon says, could you, Bartholomew, share this knowledge with me? And he says, I have to ask. And at this point, Cannon realizes, I have a new project. So Linda woke up, brought her out of trance, and she says, I have a message. This is very important. This is a big responsibility. I don't know what it is. I just know that there is much knowledge that we've been denied because of our fears and our primitive ways, and now it's time for it to return to us. And you, Dolores, have put yourself in a position, and they have chosen you because you were available doing these sessions. They went, there's somebody who's reachable. So you're going to take this information and put it in books. And Cannon had to drive to Little Rock once a month to regress Linda and Janice because she had two different projects going at the same time. She talks about Janice in other books, which I think we've talked about, but oh my God, we've talked about so many. So she tried doing one on a Saturday and one on a Sunday and spending the whole weekend. She brought Linda back into trance to get to Bartholomew, and Linda described being inside of a marketplace, inside the walls, and it was the fall equinox. There was a big celebration of the harvest. This was the old religion. They worshipped many gods, gods of the elements, the earth, the sun, the moon, the wind. The Catholic Church came to this area to try to convert people. They were stoned. They weren't accepted. So they retained their pagan ways, and they called the Catholics who came to convert them, called them pagans and treated them poorly, and they didn't like that, so they resisted. So the mission has taken Linda back earlier in Bartholomew's life, and he knows less about his teacher and his mission. So, they don't have a lot of control over where they land. Linda says, people do not understand me, Bartholomew. They live their lives, and they're in a totally different way than I live mine. My teacher says that these are the times the old man arrives, and finally they're able to talk about him, because now Bartholomew remembers, and says his name is Christopher. And Cannon regresses Linda to a time when Bartholomew is older, because she's trying to get to the information. Bartholomew seems confused about all of this now. He's younger. So Linda goes further in time and as Bartholomew finds himself in Liverpool, which is very dirty, with lots of beggars, and it's dreary. And he says he's been traveling far and wide to see many different people and different ways of life. He's traveled 10 years, many places. He went to the East to learn meditation, to get in touch with inner knowledge. He went by foot and on boat. He says, I just go where I feel I'm motivated to go. Usually, he said, people feed him and give him shelter, and he never has money, and it all sort of provides itself. Cannon says, can you say now where you're from? And he says, Seaton, which has no real name. It's far away and it's isolated. He really doesn't know where he is. He never ever leaves. Nobody ever leaves. He says, I didn't want to, but I was told I must, and I was petrified at first, but the old man friend made him go, and he's learned that where you live affects how you live and how you look at life. Well, that's a big shock. And that some people are good, some people are bad, some people are ignorant, some people never look beyond their daily life. He says, my friend taught me to focus on the middle of one's forehead, and you can communicate without words, mind to mind, doing information exchanges. Something we're more familiar with, at least the concept. Crazy talk in the Middle Ages or whatever this was. So he says other people don't realize if they knew about this, they would fear it and they would kill him. So he's able to speak with anyone he wants to this way. So he's refined this ability. He said most priests of all religions think that their religion is the only way, and they're very righteous. And he's been told by the old man that this is absolutely laughable. He says, I'm now looking for the person for me to teach, and I will know immediately. In this time, it would be useless that people are just not ready to hear this information. It would be useless to try to help the people. Too many just wouldn't be ready. But his job is to gather the information, pass it on to protect it. So he's going to Spain next. He's heard of Colombo, as he calls him, Columbus. He said people laughed at him, but Columbus is right. The earth is oval. He says, I could help him, But I was told to stay away, to stay silent. I mean, like he could support his theories publicly, but he was told not to do that, make himself a target. His old friend showed him photos, which was funny to hear him describe photos. He said they were beautiful, they were unbelievable. He was looking down on the earth from the sky, and he saw all kinds of land that nobody alive at his time knew about yet. Columbo thinks he's going east and he doesn't know about these other places, he says. Most people believe that if you go too far, you'll meet evil things, and nobody believes in anything that they can't see, and nothing beyond where they live. A lot of them don't even believe that there are really all these other cultures. At first on his journey, he said he was fearful, but then he quickly realized he would not be hurt. His friend has said that the ways that people will change and life will change. Told him about carriages in the sky, that people will travel all over and have no horses. Machinery to do the work of 10. All you have to do is push a button. This just blew his mind. That people will communicate across great distances. And they won't be so ignorant and therefore not so fearful. They'll have little machines to talk with each other. And he said communication is the key because it will help to create a lack of fear. Elon Musk. So he was told that there are other Earths and they are far more progressed than our Earth. And they will visit us as we grow and progress. And that people of his time are held back by fear. And if they don't understand, whatever they don't understand, they want to kill or destroy. But if they, the priests try to keep other people under control with their religious philosophy. They believe in one God and a hierarchy, and if you don't, then they tell you you're going to be damned for eternity, and people are afraid of that. They believe it. He said it's toxic. It's not true. That there are many paths, all of them equally valid, depending on who you are or what path you choose. The priests don't let people examine other truths. They don't even let them examine their own truths. People are limited. They follow directions. They do things only the priest's way. No one is capable of thinking for himself. He said religion and all politics do this. Tell you what to think, tell you what to do. This is a global pattern. The fear is the same. It holds people back to stay safe. And because of fear of punishment. And he describes some various forms of punishment. He said people in cities don't live nearly as long or healthy in his time. There's much disease and death. Most people die around the age of 40. He says, I'm 50, but I'm healthy because I'm active. He says he has no money. He has no need for it. He has no new clothes. People see him in need of clothes and give them to him. And he doesn't carry food with him. People always feed him. He says he was worried about finding the prodigy before he gets too old. He says that he's directed where and when to go. Cannon moves him forward in time and finds himself in Spain. He says it's warm and sunny, which is a nice contrast to where he's come from. That people are more open-minded, which is really surprising. Because I'm thinking the Inquisition, so this is much earlier. He says he's been told that he'll find a student, but not in Spain, that he's going to have to go to a farther place. So chapter 2, the lessons begin. Cannon regressed Linda to a time where Bartholomew was in this strange capsule, and then takes him to this moving capsule, and she says, as Bartholomew, I woke up, I asked to go on a journey, I was told to put on these clothes, a beam of light enveloped me. I'm very old, almost 60. Hey. He said, I thought I'd failed my mission. I couldn't find the prodigy on Earth. All cultures are too wrapped up with traditional beliefs and their constrained systems. So this time he's been told that this is his last journey and that he would find the prodigy, that someone open and willing to accept facts without fear, and that he was going to a colony, that it was a place where the hope is that pure truth will pervade. And he's going to give them the information, and they'll be the keepers of the information until people on Earth are ready for it. So the prodigy is there, and he will come to Earth when the time is right. We're not, we're talking somebody with information. So nothing or nobody on Earth has a pure enough heart to deal with this. There's a lot of distortion, and they would misuse it. They would need to learn many lessons before they receive this information. The message would be distorted and eventually would destroy the Earth. So the colony was a holding space, and the people there actually don't age. Because Bartholomew's soul pattern is different, he'll give the information, and then he'll go to the holding place and where he can rest. He can't return to the Earth for a very long time. He's going to go to be with the all, capital letters. So he'll return to Earth, but in a different body, incarnation, and in a different capacity. He's still in his human body right now, and soon won't be. At least I think that's what it says. Cannon takes Linda in a session back to a time when Bartholomew reaches the colony. He finds himself sitting in a chair in a capsule hovering over a very bright place surrounded by a cylinder of light, and immediately finds himself with other spirits in a capsule. Beings of light who are very happy to see him. Each is different, but too bright to really look at closely. He says he feels he's floating free of his body. He says he sees them as humans, but they're really pure energy. He says, I think it's a different plane of existence. I think it's a physical body back in the capsule, but that I've crossed out of that and out of the physical plane. Cannon asks to hear the knowledge that he's getting, and Bartholomew says you can listen in, and some of it you wouldn't be able to hear because there's a plan for the Earth, and it's being implemented, and you will know when the plan is in place, but right now it's not the time. And then this is a while back. Cannon was told that she can listen because they know she won't distort the information. Before the lessons, he's welcomed. Everybody's happy to see him. He gets the sense they know who he is. Cannon reminds Bartholomew to repeat what the spirits ask and say, because she can't hear them. He doesn't realize that. And she can only hear what Linda says as Bartholomew in the trance. So there's a question from spirits. What happened on Earth to make people's belief system so narrow? They're kind of shocked by this. And eons ago, people came to the Earth with vast knowledge, and they met these Earth inhabitants with no knowledge. And this raised issues of power. The newcomers were not familiar. They liked this feeling of power. This was new to them. And so they used their special knowledge as a cudgel of power, and they kept it secret because then they could retain power. And they enslaved the earthly inhabitants who were not very wise, and they told misinformation to cause fear to keep people in control. People regarded them as gods, all powerful, all wise, and so they took on that aspect. They pretended they became the gods because they had abilities that human inhabitants didn't understand. So we're talking about dimensional, vibrational travel and beings with knowledge that they're now misusing. They used fear and ignorance of the people to control and to keep the power, and they used greed, and they decided to stay. And these stories told of people needing to obey or be destroyed by the gods. Gods told people that the beings told people that they could, that the gods were capable of ruling the elements and the sun, and that they were capable of destroying the earth. And the humans didn't understand that they possessed a soul, a spirit that lives forever, that they were no different than these beings, just less informed. So the original purpose of light beings was to give humans this message. But the newcomers did tricks with lights and magic and technology to make people think that they were gods. And human nature is a constant fight against fear and self-service. Power. So the newcomers failed their purpose. They did not do what they were supposed to do. And they were supposed to be serving humanity, passing on knowledge. They were supposed to raise the level of Earth to a higher existence and get humans to live on a higher level. But they got stuck by the allure of the temptations of the physical world, power, greed. They lost their light because they were distracted by power, and they were lowered instead of raising humans up. So, it's a process. And it's not about bad and good. It's about learning and not learning. It's about succeeding and failing at the effort and its eventual goal to raise vibrations. And we'll keep repeating that as we go along. So the question from them is, why weren't more light beings sent to help and to remove those who were misusing power? And that was because there was the fear that they too would fail. They would fall prey to the allure of that low vibratory, dense earth thing. So it was decided that they would await a new generation. The first who came here were from a place called Tyrantus, similar to Earth in magnetic field. The newcomers fit in, but they were taken down by lust for power. The second wave came from a place called Arrhenius. They didn't look human. They came in disguise as animals, and they worked with a few chosen people through their dreams, and they taught about love and immortality and cooperation between species, but too few people were able to receive or understand this for it to be successful. They were scorned by the populace, and man continued to sink to a low level. There's a description of these beings, very small, pliable, skinny limbs, large round heads. They disguised themselves as animals, as we said. They were trying to influence people but it was too subtle and too slow. Cannon says this is a huge part of Native American culture and other global cultures. And also today, often the whole UFO ET narrative, they often are described as appearing as animals. There's a commonality here. This is not brand new information. So the question is, why didn't the second group come to fix it? And that was because force never works. We have to decide to do this on our own. We have free will. The earth must come to the realization it must make the choices itself. And she asked how long before there's more people or more helpers sent. And how long was it before more were sent? And they said 10,000 years. They hoped people would grow in this amount of time, but they grew into darkness, not into light. There's very little light in the hearts of people at this time. Too much killing, hate, power, struggle, not enough love, they're very primitive. So the question is, what were the changes at the time? The earth changes, floods, continent breakup, the heat, and many people died. What was that all about? And they said, well, they hoped that it would lead to lighter energy. Why did continents break apart in the first place? And they said, well, shifts in Earth, some of this is natural. It released heat and it melted ice and it flooded and many were lost. But it eventually cooled and vegetation grew back and there was a hope again for light. Love and acceptance could thrive. But it didn't for long. It did for a while, but not for long. People got bored. And this is what we've heard. This is a common story we've heard. People have this, this inability to be happy when things are good. They love melodrama. And they got bored with peace. And they wanted to look for excitement. This is one of the theories about why kind of how war developed. People got bored, they looked for excitement, they played games, they got more competitive, they got more nasty with each other in their games. Games became more violent, and eventually sport, it was a back and forth. It wasn't just that sport reflected war, sport helped contribute to war. So they hoped that people would evolve to be content with good, but with the life, but that didn't happen. Things would be good. People played games. The games became tests of strength, tests of will, competitions, excitement. It was all about power struggles. I'm important. Our team is better, stronger. People started falling into that same trap, and it's part of human nature that fed that conflict urge. Part of human nature. We were mixed with entities from other places, and there was a desire for power, and it was magnified. So it backfired. Newcomers' genetics interacted with humans to make these traits stronger. Instead of more light, it made the competition and the thirst for power and greed stronger. It took a long time to send the second wave from because of the fear of magnifying these negative traits. When Linda woke up from her trance, she described what she saw. She said the earth is hollow and held together with things moving inside, that there are lots of things roiling on the top surface of the earth as she saw it, and the center was hollow. So this second wave of newcomers with the big round heads were silver and kind of bright. They were extensions from can't read my handwriting. Hang on here a second. Okay. In India, there's gods like Lakshmi, Durga, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and you often see them. In fact, I've got one over here somewhere. You see them with lots of arms, things coming out of their body. That's what those entities look like. It was energy. And she said they didn't have any hair. They had lots of limbs. They were entirely silver with these limbs of light coming out. And they actually entered into real animals, and they contacted people telepathically through their dreams, through their pets, through animals. Native Americans believe that. Linda says that she sees that the humans were dark, small, and dark literally and figuratively, that their hair and skin was dark, but that their energetic situation was dark. And the newcomers were very light, and that the light may simply be symbolic of their spirit state, but it didn't last. Earth beings started out with no knowledge. They were primitive and in awe of the newcomers, but they were taken advantage of. Even an advanced being can be corrupted. I thought that was very interesting. So the newcomers were very tall, erect, and regal, said we're gods. Linda says that she sees the light beings as blobs of light that remind her of Casper the Friendly Ghost. Peaceful, happy, loving, but then things deteriorated. In her next session as Bartholomew, she says Bartholomew is standing on a platform in front of students and in this other place. And the question is, why were people on earth dissatisfied with peace? And it's because they wanted an emotional experience of a heightened nature. We have this craving for heightened emotions. They got tired of calm. They wanted excitement. Games became war as an outlet for this. Their hearts darkened. There was much killing, much trauma. Calm had not provided them an outlet for their emotional needs. They didn't realize that this would cause them to lose the light. And it didn't go away, but it dimmed. They craved exhilaration. The space beings decided to leave Earth, the other ones, to hopefully evolve on its own and let people either grow or demolish themselves, and leave the planet free for other beings to lead a life of good. So they watched from afar and they wondered why. And time is a different thing, a different construct for them because there's really no time. So they could tune in mentally, and sometimes they would come here, but not too often because there's just too much negativity, murder, killing, death. They couldn't just abandon the Earth completely because it's the most beautiful planet and it's a master planet. It was designed for its beauty as an experiment in emotional and physical pleasure, and they simply couldn't just abandon it. It just didn't evolve as they had hoped. They had planned. The plan was that other beings would come here on vacation for pleasure. And it started that way, but some got caught up in the pleasure and thrill-seeking and stayed, and boom, the vibratory level went down. The longer they stayed, the less able they were to leave. They got caught up in the cycle of karma. And they were here when the first teacher beings arrived, and they too got caught up in the cycle of karma and stuck. The master plan was beautiful. The Earth was a beautiful reward for a short stay, a reward for jobs well done, but everything went wrong. Cannon says she's heard this from other people before. The Earth was a holiday retreat until souls became entrapped by physical pleasure. Earth changes. Some were sudden, continents breaking up. Some were gradual, like increasing heat, and abrupt, like flooding. Almost nowhere did not get flooded at some point. Very few people actually survived these events, and eventually even they got tired of peace. They lived in peace for a while, but then the whole cycle started over again. The mythology of the flood is not about some original flood. Biblical floods came much later in human history. It had happened often before. These cycles have repeated and repeated, and often many of them happened long before recorded history. And any kind of record that existed, archaeological evidence, written evidence, was destroyed. Events were repeated. Those who survived were human and not enlightened enough to want to leave, and they didn't know of life beyond their own existence, which was probably good because they might have contaminated other planets too. If other places had been perceptive to their way of thinking, it could have spread. I wrote Elon, since he's going to take his insanity out there into the universe, just a little thing he might think about. So the next waves of beings came to instruct without mingling. And they looked human, but they were very tall. They had 5 feet. They kept covered 100% of the time because their hands and feet were weird. They had large dark eyes. They had holes instead of a nose. They don't eat or drink. They use light for energy. They get their sustenance, their nourishment from light. They brought lights with them and said that the light came from the source. They required these regular literal lights like light bulbs. And these lights provided them with a light bath that restored their light. Their main ship was in the sky, and it sent smaller satellite ships all over the planet. Most were successful. They taught a whole lot, many of the first philosophers that we're familiar with. The things they taught were things like agriculture, to divert people from hunting and killing, and to make people not nomadic, because if you stay in one place, you have time to think. They taught kindness and harmony. Earthlings wanted to think that they were gods, but the visitors resisted it and taught them what they needed to learn and then left, and was a great success. Humans were given a better existence. There was stability. There was a chance to use their minds. As usual, there were those who would not listen. And at this time, not many people existed. They all looked the same. and this was still later in evolution. People differentiated eventually, and as time went by, and their look and their culture all got different because different groups, this is interesting, different groups of humans in various places in this early world interacted with different beings from many areas of the universe and many dimensions, and this is why we all appear so different from each other. And the colors and the looks of people, the physiognomy, how people look. At first on the Earth, everybody was exactly the same looking, but eventually, with the influence of other beings, it all changed. So this slowly changed as different isolated groups intermingled with visitors from across the universe, and when all were the same in the beginning, we were warm brown color with no hair, and we were smaller build. We also mingled with some animals to have their strength. This was a very bad idea. This was experimentation gone wrong, and it affected our speech and our capacity to think rationally. It caused us to regress, and it was stopped. So, a lot of these mythologies about, what do you call them? Centaurs and minotaurs and, Sagittarius, part horse, part, griffins, and all this weird, cryptology. That's from that time period. It stopped because it wasn't good. It gave people some traits that remained, like a higher stature and more strength. And the first of these hybrids had no care about family or about life. They just were interested in solitude and physical survival. The space beings wanted to teach humans to get along together, to be more open, to be more loving. And it's important to think of these entities as more than just somebody from a neighboring planet. We're talking vibratory levels, dimensional levels. So the question is, politicians, and the answer is, well, the creatures were the opposite. They were loners. They only interacted when they needed for survival. It was the next generation that had a little more sense of community and eventually politics. So some of these various space beings came with good intentions and brought technology and philosophy, and some came to explore, got caught up in the earthly stuff and stuck. So when the original visitors got agriculture going and left, many aliens assumed that the earth would evolve. But breeding had stopped. They assumed that they could help advance a higher existence. Some came to help with this. Some came out of curiosity. Some came for selfish motivation. And some came to conquer. And these were warrior types. And they came from, a small warlike planet that was avoided by others because it was too self-serving. And when the okay was given in the master plan to come to Earth, the first visitors from Sirius, they brought the agriculture and left. The others thought that they could be successful, and various groups came with various intentions, and some helped and some did not. And the reason why I'm repeating a little bit is because this is a narrative from various sessions, and sometimes the sessions repeated the information. So the warrior planet people came without asking. It was unexpected. And groups in charge of the master plan weren't happy about it. They were surprised, but they decided Earth was bad enough already, and these warriors couldn't make it worse. And I wrote, oops. So this group was highly intellectually evolved, and it hoped that this could help people, but they were too warlike. So why didn't people embrace leave? And the answer is it has to be desired. It's a universal law. Cannot infringe on another without permission. We have free will. And people liked what was going on. They couldn't be forced to love or seek light. Let me see here. Oh, sorry. People were happy to get agriculture and anything that improved their physical life, but they couldn't be forced to accept the philosophy. It was hoped, and Cannon talks about this in The Keepers of the Garden, it was hoped that it would plant a spark that would grow, and she was told about this, that there were seedings of the earth. Linda, as Bartholomew, said, it's my pleasure to clarify that ideas have been distorted. I want to help Earth to evolve. We will become light beings if we respect all. That is not light, that we just look to the light, try for the light. And Cannon scheduled stuff. She was very busy, and it took a few months to get back and do these sessions for chapter 3, the energy devices. So I'm going to stop here. This is a really good place to stop, and I'm sorry that this took so long today to get to. And this is going to take a couple of weeks to get through, so I hope you're enjoying it. It's full of really interesting stuff. But I'm not going to do like 7 videos all at one time. It's too much. So for now, I'll be back today with video number 2. Beyond that, I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do tomorrow, because it's already really late in the day and it's getting dark. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you're enjoying this, and I'll be back soon with video number 2. Slangevoort.